Leonidas Donskis, thank you very much. Tell us, what's the major message of the resolution on Russia that will be voted on Thursday? As we know, you are one of the initiators of this resolution that supports political prisoners in Russia.
I believe that the very essence of this message is about our anxiety about what's happening in Russia in terms of deterioration of civil liberties and human rights. And I believe that legislation, which is increasingly becoming similar to Soviet legislation, which bears some family resemblance to Soviet legislation, like law which evaluates every NGO as a foreign agent. So something that is straight out of that epoch that we thought was part of the past. So we're trying to send a message that we're really worried about it, and that we are working with NGOs and human rights defenders, that we are standing by them, that we're not indifferent, and we're sending a very clear message that this is not a matter of nuances or vocabulary. It's a matter of the very principle, of the very heart of European policies of human rights and fundamental civil liberties.
We know that you are coordinator of the group for human rights within European Liberals here in the Parliament. What you would like to say to people who support the idea of realpolitik towards Russia?
I think it's a kind of self-deception. It's being debated many times, and I realize that big nations like Germany or France, they have a different attitude to Russia for obvious reasons. I happen to be a Lithuanian, so that's why I know that for small countries, things are very different from those perspectives that could be adopted by Germany or France or Great Britain, who can rely on bilateral relations. But I would say that it's a kind of self-deception, because if we disagree on fundamental things, if we don't speak one voice, but one voice defending human rights, civil liberties, fundamental rights, we would fail. We'd be at the peril of failure. Because in fact, no matter how much I respect all trade agreements with conditionalities, no matter how much I rely on trade and economic cooperation, the point is that we must defend human rights. And Russia is a very special case because it has little, if any, to do with the realpolitik. But all major human rights defenders, all major influences came from Russia. We have to agree on an obvious thing, that even the Supreme Award for human rights and democracy and freedom of expression, the Sakharov Award, is a symbolic thing which is inseparable from Russia. This is to say that we cannot be at risk of betraying our friends and allies. We are proud of people who defended Russia's democracy in the Bolotnaya Square. So that's why it's pivotal for us to take sides and to be with them and to send a clear message. They are Russian and European citizens of that kind, which can only is able to create the 21st century world. So that's why I think realpolitik, it could be helpful after very, very difficult periods of time, like for instance the breakup of the Soviet Union, and then, you know, some new periods, or the perestroika. But now we have, look, a civilized state in Russia. It's a democratic state, and it simply misuses or abuses power. So that's why we have to be straight, critical, and absolutely clear on this.
But today your leader, Guy Verhofstadt, was absolutely clear. He said that Russia is moving from soft authoritarianism to hard authoritarianism. And it looks to us that European Union is losing grounds because all human rights defenders are under tremendous pressure, and they are losing their most basic constitutional rights. They can't live their rights because Russia is a democratic state according to the constitution.
Yeah.
But people can't live their rights. As you saw on Bolotnaya Square, they were peacefully manifesting their protest. So what's the way out?
Absolutely. On the one side, so we have to understand one detail, which is quite obvious for me as an academic. So I remember what happened in the 1990s, in the 1980s, and in the beginning of the 1990s. So was our naive belief that after Francis Fukuyama, everybody was able to repeat the phrase that was the end of history, with a perfect Democrat, Boris Yeltsin, with the triumph of democracy all over Europe. It was a self-deception. It was not to be, because then we understood that, yes, things can deteriorate in Russia. Russia, no matter how better it is than the former Soviet Union, could be a very problematic state. We understood that things could be quite problematic for the West. I think after the Cold War, after the triumph, after the breakup of the Soviet Union, After the fall of the Berlin Wall, I think we became hostages of old concepts, and we have just to get back to the senses. It's a wake-up call that things could be very problematic. We must defend human rights in Russia, and things are not fatalistic or pessimistic at this point. Russia is a member of the Council of Europe, so that's why we have some leverage. We can control things because Russia is fundamentally interested in remaining close to Europe in many ways. But it's very important for us to understand that nothing is easy, nothing is obvious in this world. We have to fight for human dignity, for human rights. And this is not to say that it's easy to separate economic package, so to say, trade, oil, gas thing from human. No, they're inseparable. Either we have a civilized political concept for the future, or we fail in the rest of our concept. So that's why I think for some of my colleagues it comes as a shock. They think that, well, it cannot happen. Probably they are maneuvering. No, the story is not over yet, because the Soviet Union, no matter how much we celebrated its breakup, left very difficult processes. It's a kind of time bomb. And that's why it's very important to support democracy in Russia, to avoid the worst-case scenario, because many unresolved problems, many unsolved issues are still there. They may be on the surface at any time. And this is not to say that Russia is the only country which is very problematic at this point. I could say that many post-Soviet, post-communist countries like that. Nobody is perfect from that camp. But in any case, we have to understand there is no evil like a demon. It's just our courage to defend our principles or our failure to do so.
Thank you very much, Leonidas Donskis.
Thank you.